North America, a landmass shared by three nations, intricately connected by trade, history and culture. For decades, the United States, Canada and Mexico enjoyed a symbiotic relationship, their economies intertwined. Goods, services and people flowed freely, fueling growth and prosperity. This balance shifted with political change. The election of Donald Trump signaled a departure from traditional trade policies. Trump campaigned on economic nationalism, promising to renegotiate trade deals. His vision was America first. In 2018, tariffs on steel and aluminum imports were announced. The decision rattled the United States' closest neighbors. Canada found itself caught in a trade dispute. Mexico, too, was blindsided by the tariffs. The country faced economic turmoil. The tariffs were seen as a negotiating tactic. For Canada and Mexico, the stakes were high. A trade war would have no winners. The initial shock of the tariffs was quickly followed by a wave of condemnation and defiance. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, known for his measured demeanor, responded with uncharacteristic force, calling the tariffs insulting and unacceptable. Mexico, too, vowed to retaliate, targeting American products with tariffs of their own. The stage was set for a trade war, a conflict with the potential to disrupt global supply chains, raise prices for consumers, and damage the long-standing economic and political relationships between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. What began as a dispute over steel and aluminum quickly escalated into a much broader battle over trade, sovereignty, and national pride. As the tariffs went into effect, businesses on both sides of the border braced for impact. Canadian steelworkers faced uncertainty, while American manufacturers reliant on Canadian imports grappled with rising costs. Farmers too felt the pinch as the flow of agricultural products across the border slowed to a trickle. The economic pain, it seemed, was just beginning. The trade war, however, was not just about economic numbers. It was about trust, about the bonds that had long united these three nations. The tariffs, seen by many as a betrayal of friendship and shared values, cast a long shadow over North America, threatening to unravel the fabric of cooperation that had been woven over generations. The question now was whether these wounds could be healed or whether the continent was destined for a future of division and economic strife. On June 1, 2018, President Trump announced tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada, Mexico, and the European Union. The decision sent shockwaves through global markets and marked a significant escalation in Trump's trade war. The Dow Jones Industrial Average plunged, reflecting growing uncertainty and anxiety within the business community. Targeting Canada and Mexico, America's largest trading partners, was seen as a betrayal of long-standing partnerships. The Trump administration justified the tariffs on the grounds of national security, arguing that a strong domestic steel and aluminum industry was vital to America's defense industrial base. Critics, however, were quick to point out that the national security argument rang hollow. The tariffs, they argued, were less about national security and more about protecting American jobs. Many saw the tariffs as a blatant attempt to appease Trump's political base, even if it meant alienating allies and risking a trade war. The announcement of the tariffs sent shockwaves through Ottawa and Mexico City as officials scrambled to respond. Both countries condemned the tariffs as unjustified and damaging. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called the tariffs absurd and insulting. He vowed to retaliate with tariffs on American products. Canada would not be bullied. In Mexico, the response was equally forceful. President Enrique Peña Nieto vowed reciprocal measures. Mexico targeted American products with tariffs. The stage was set for a bitter trade war. Canada, long accustomed to a cordial relationship with its southern neighbor, found itself in uncharted territory. The Trump administration's tariffs struck a nerve deep within the Canadian psyche. It was seen as an affront to the long-standing friendship and shared values. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau's response was swift and resolute. Canada announced retaliatory tariffs on American goods. The message was clear. Canada was prepared to fight fire with fire. Canadian officials launched a charm offensive in Washington, D.C. They highlighted the integrated nature of the North American economy. The goal was to show the tariffs threatened the entire continent. The Canadian public rallied behind their government's stance. There was a sense of outrage and betrayal. Canadians displayed a steely resolve to stand up for their values. The economic consequences of the trade war were not long in materializing. The tariffs disrupted supply chains, increased costs for businesses, and created uncertainty in the markets. The Canadian steel and aluminum industries were hit particularly hard, with job losses and plant closures. The retaliatory tariffs imposed by Canada also began to bite, as American businesses and consumers faced higher prices. The trade war had a ripple effect on the Canadian economy, slowing investment and consumer spending. Despite the economic pain, there was a sense of resilience and determination among Canadians. The government remained steadfast in its commitment to free and fair trade. The trade war strained the once cordial relationship between Canada and the United States, injecting tension and mistrust. The personal rapport between Trudeau and Trump evaporated as the trade dispute escalated. Public pronouncements became pointed, with each leader accusing the other of unfair trade practices. The trade war exposed a growing rift within the North American alliance. Mexico sought a bilateral trade deal, while Canada remained committed to NAFTA. The trade war tested the close ties between Canadian and American businesses. Companies faced disrupted supply chains, rising costs, and uncertain market conditions. The trade war became a boardroom issue, with leaders grappling with prolonged economic conflict. The trade war revealed deeper political and cultural differences between Canada and the United States. Canada's multilateralism clashed with Trump's America First agenda. The trade war was about fundamentally different visions of the world and America's place in it. Canada stood firm against U.S. trade actions but sought a negotiated solution. Engaging in diplomacy, Canada aimed to avoid prolonged economic harm. Leveraging international alliances, Canada pressured the U.S. to reconsider. Canada engaged with American stakeholders to highlight mutual benefits. Committed to modernizing NAFTA, Canada sought a balanced solution. The shockwaves of Trump's tariff announcement reverberated deeply within Mexico, a nation whose economic fortunes were inextricably linked to its northern neighbor. The United States had been Mexico's largest trading partner, the destination for over 80% of its exports. This reliance on the American market became a source of vulnerability as the specter of a trade war loomed large. The initial reaction in Mexico was a mix of anger and apprehension. The tariffs ignited a sense of indignation among the Mexican people. The timing of the announcement, coinciding with the renegotiation of NAFTA, further fueled suspicions. The Mexican government, led by President Enrique Peña Nieto, found itself in a delicate position. There was a strong desire to respond forcefully to what was perceived as an affront to Mexican sovereignty. The Mexican people expected their leaders to stand up to Trump's bullying tactics. The Mexican economy, heavily reliant on exports to the United States, was particularly vulnerable to a trade war. The challenge for the Mexican government was to strike a balance between these competing imperatives. It was a high-stakes game of economic chess, one that required careful calculation and a deft diplomatic touch. Section 2. A measured response, balancing trade and diplomacy. The Mexican government, after careful deliberation, opted for a measured response to the tariffs, one that combined retaliatory measures with a continued commitment to dialogue and diplomacy. Mexico announced tariffs on a range of American products, carefully chosen to inflict economic pain on key constituencies in the United States, while minimizing the impact on Mexican consumers and businesses. The list of targeted products included agricultural goods, such as pork, cheese, and apples, as well as steel and aluminum products. The tariffs, while designed to send a strong signal to the Trump administration, were also carefully calibrated to avoid disrupting key supply chains or causing significant price increases for Mexican consumers. The Mexican government also recognized that a purely tit-for-tat approach to the trade war would be counterproductive. Mexico, despite its differences with the United States on trade, remained committed to finding a negotiated solution to the dispute. Mexican officials continued to engage in talks with their American counterparts, both bilaterally and within the framework of the NAFTA renegotiations, seeking to find common ground and de-escalate the trade tensions. This dual-track approach, combining retaliation with diplomacy, reflected the complex realities of the U.S.-Mexico relationship. Mexico, while determined to defend its interests, also recognized the importance of maintaining a constructive relationship with its northern neighbor, not just for economic reasons, but also for security and regional stability. Check one, check two, check. Economic impacts, a delicate interdependence. The trade war's economic impact was felt on both sides of the border. In Mexico, tariffs and NAFTA uncertainty slowed investment and business confidence. Manufacturing and agriculture sectors experienced job losses and declining output. U.S. tariffs disrupted long-established supply chains. Mexican businesses faced higher costs and delays, leading to slowdowns. NAFTA uncertainty further exacerbated these challenges. American businesses and consumers also felt the impact. Mexico is a significant market for American goods. Mexican tariffs raised costs for American businesses and consumers. American farmers lost a major market as Mexico sought alternatives. The trade war harmed businesses and workers on both sides. The tariffs highlighted the deep interdependence of the U.S. and Mexican economies. Seeking alternatives, diversification and new horizons. The trade war prompted Mexico to re-evaluate its trade relationships and explore new opportunities for economic diversification. Mexico began to reduce its dependence on the United States and expand its trade relationships with other countries. Mexico signed new trade agreements with the European Union and Trans-Pacific Partnership. This diversification aimed to enhance economic resilience and reduce vulnerability to American trade policy. Tariffs have a long history, dating back to ancient civilizations. From the Silk Road to the Roman Empire, tariffs protected domestic industries and generated revenue. The allure of tariffs has proven remarkably enduring. In the mercantilist era, European powers embraced tariffs for wealth and dominance. High tariffs protected domestic industries and promoted exports. The early United States used tariffs to protect nascent industries. Alexander Hamilton argued for tariffs to nurture American manufacturing. Tariffs provided a level playing field for American businesses. The debate over tariffs was far from settled. The U.S. oscillated between high and low tariffs throughout the 19th century. This reflected the tension between protectionism and free trade. The Great Depression of the 1930s, a global economic catastrophe that plunged millions into poverty and unemployment, cast a long shadow over the debate about tariffs and trade policy. The economic downturn, triggered by a stock market crash in the United States, quickly spread around the world as countries desperate to protect their own economies resorted to beggar-thy-neighbor policies, including high tariffs, import quotas, and currency devaluations. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930, passed by the United States Congress in the midst of the deepening depression, is widely regarded as a prime example of the perils of protectionism. The act, which raised tariffs on over 20,000 imported goods to record levels, was intended to protect American jobs and businesses from foreign competition. However, the act backfired spectacularly, triggering retaliatory tariffs from other countries and further constricting global trade. The Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act, far from protecting American jobs, is widely blamed for exacerbating the Great Depression. The tariffs, by raising the cost of imported goods, reduced consumer purchasing power and further depressed demand. The retaliatory tariffs imposed by other countries, in turn, closed off export markets for American businesses, leading to further job losses and economic contraction. The experience of the Great Depression served as a cautionary tale about the dangers of protectionism and the importance of international cooperation on trade. The economic devastation wrought by the trade wars of the 1930s, etched in the memories of policymakers and economists alike, helped to pave the way for a new era of global trade liberalization in the post-war era. The aftermath of World War II witnessed a profound shift in global economic thinking. The devastation of the war and the Great Depression fostered a consensus for international cooperation and open markets. The General Agreement on Tariffs and Trade, GATT, in 1947 marked a turning point in trade relations. GATT aimed at reducing tariffs and trade barriers, promoting peaceful trade negotiations. GATT's negotiations led to unprecedented growth in global trade and investment. The World Trade Organization, WTO, in 1995 strengthened the rules-based trading system. The WTO promoted free trade, resolved disputes, and ensured a level playing field. Despite challenges, the WTO created a more open, predictable global trading system. Post-World War II, global economic growth and prosperity were fueled by trade expansion. Reduced tariffs and trade barriers lowered prices, created markets, and drove growth. Globalization, despite challenges, showed free trade's potential to lift millions out of poverty. The Trump administration's tariffs on steel and aluminum imports had significant economic implications, impacting businesses, consumers, and the overall economic landscape. The tariffs aimed to protect American jobs, but often proved counterproductive. Prices for consumers and businesses rose immediately. Increased costs rippled through the economy, affecting various industries. Businesses passed costs to consumers, reducing purchasing power and spending. The tariffs disrupted established supply chains. Businesses faced delays, shortages, and increased costs. Uncertainty discouraged investment and hampered growth. The trade war negatively impacted employment. Job losses occurred in manufacturing, agriculture, and retail. The trade war resulted in job losses across industries. The trade war, while a period of significant tension and uncertainty, also served as a catalyst for a broader conversation about the future of North American trade and the need to modernize and strengthen the rules governing economic relations between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. The renegotiation of the North American Free Trade Agreement, which coincided with the trade war, provided an opportunity to address some of the long-standing concerns about the agreement, including issues related to labor standards, environmental protections, and rules of origin for manufactured goods. The result of these negotiations, the United States-Mexico-Canada Agreement, while not a radical departure from NAFTA, did include some updates and revisions aimed at addressing some of these concerns. The trade war also highlighted the need for greater cooperation and communication between the three countries on trade and economic issues. The tariffs, imposed unilaterally by the Trump administration, caught Canada and Mexico off guard and created a climate of mistrust and uncertainty. The experience underscored the importance of dialogue and consultation between the three countries, particularly when considering policies that could have significant economic implications for all involved. The trade war, while a challenging chapter in the history of North American trade relations, also presented an opportunity to learn from past mistakes and forge a more resilient and mutually beneficial economic partnership for the future. The experience underscored the importance of open markets, predictable trade rules, and a commitment to dialogue and cooperation as essential ingredients for continued economic growth and prosperity in the region. The trade war, initiated by the Trump administration's tariffs on steel and aluminum imports from Canada and Mexico, stands as a stark reminder of the perils of protectionism in an interconnected global economy. The tariffs, while intended to protect American jobs and industries, ultimately proved to be a blunt instrument, causing economic pain on all sides of the border and undermining the very industries they were designed to protect. The trade war highlighted the interconnectedness of the North American economy, demonstrating how tariffs on goods from one country can ripple through supply chains, disrupt businesses, and harm consumers across borders. The experience served as a cautionary tale, underscoring the economic and political costs of protectionism and the importance of maintaining open markets, predictable trade rules, and strong relationships with key trading partners. The trade war also revealed the limits of unilateral action in a globalized economy. The tariffs imposed by the United States without prior consultation or negotiation with Canada and Mexico created a climate of uncertainty and mistrust, straining relationships and hindering cooperation on issues of mutual interest. The experience highlighted the importance of dialogue, diplomacy, and multilateral solutions to address trade disputes and promote economic stability. The trade war, while a period of significant economic and political tension, also served as a catalyst for reflection and reform. The renegotiation of NAFTA, prompted in part by the trade war, provided an opportunity to modernize and strengthen the rules governing trade and investment in North America, addressing some of the long-standing concerns about the agreement and laying the groundwork for a more balanced and mutually beneficial economic partnership. The trade war, while disruptive, presented an opportunity to learn from past mistakes and forge a more resilient economic future for North America. It underscored the importance of diversification, innovation, and free trade for long-term growth. Canada and Mexico accelerated efforts to diversify their trading relationships, seeking new markets and reducing reliance on the U.S. This diversification promises greater economic resilience and a balanced trading relationship. Thank you for watching the Think Tank. Please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.